Hey guys, welcome back to the PC Perspective podcast. This is episode 554. 554 of these things, and we're still going strong. It's April 14, 2019 is when we're recording this, and I'm joined by an international panel of panelists this week. All from North America, but international nonetheless. Let's go around the horn. I'm Sebastian Peak.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom, the token
I'm
Canadian.
Josh Walrus. I'm going to interrupt you.
Canadians get no respect.
I'm Brett Van Spruenberg.
So let's have a podcast. But since last week, quite a bit has been going on around here. We'll talk about that in a minute. Our week in review pretty much covers what I've been doing for the last few days.
Dude, that's
first,
like a super card right behind you.
Yeah, it's pretty super.
Super.
I should turn on this system so you can see some RGBs going on in the background. But Josh, we need a burger update. It's Wednesday.
Yeah.
Did you actually have a burger this week, or did you have?
I did. And I
Sloppy
even
Joe's?
posted
Did you have
that,
Beanie Weenie? Okay, we had a real burger.
It was a real double burger with honey sriracha sauce, cucumbers, pepper jack, and then jalapenos with cream cheese. The combination was surprisingly good.
It sounds like everywhere you had spice on that, you had some sweet or the sweet and sour.
Yeah, to kind of offset it a little bit.
Yeah, like the honey counteracts the sriracha.
Usually I like a spicier burger, but this was a nice, very flavorful burger.
Yeah,
I
excellent.
liked it.
Could you describe it? Could you describe what it looked like? Jim is shaking his head somewhere. What is everybody
So there
drinking?
I am. With
Beer
a
update.
burger.
Does anybody have a drink? I don't. I don't even have water in front of me. I just ran down here, turned the system on, and I have nothing to refresh myself.
I have a nice Scottish ale from Michigan, I believe. Founders.
Oh, is that another Bell's? Oh, Founders. Yeah, see?
Founders. It's
I'm
old,
very
old
lucky
dirty
to live
bastard.
where I do. Yep.
Yeah.
And
Founders
a summer
Founders.
pale ale here with a bit of a lemon aftertaste.
Well, who made that one?
And
what do you
Strange
have?
Ways Brewing.
Okay. What do you have, Jeremy?
Fuggles and Warlock Pale Ale.
Nice. Jealous.
You hoppy bastard.
Which it's only single hopped. It's very, very mild.
Week in review, and that's our clever name for the weekend reviews that we've done. A couple big things. We'll start. I'll talk about the custom cooling from Corsair next, but very first add-in board partner cards have hit from AMD's partners. We finally have aftermarket coolers for Radeon RX 5700 series cards. Are you guys excited about this?
I am pulsing with excitement.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, good.
My nipples
Good transition
explode.
It's
that was
the news
okay. We took
scintillating.
one step forward and 10 steps back. Thank you, Josh.
So it
No,
has
the
two
pulse. I guess the fans. Actually, you know what? The fans do have those. Never mind. We'll forget about anatomic similarities to other things on aftermarket coolers. These are axial fans.
Everything
that we were just
good
talking
comes
about.
in pairs. Everything.
Yes. Including
You can't be
axial
stopped.
fans of some
Siskel and Ebert.
95 millimeters, not 100, 95. Close enough to 100, though. You can round up. But we're talking about a Radeon RX 5700 XT that is not a reference blower design. The very first one that I've gotten hands on with was this Sapphire card, which sadly is already gone again. They emailed me the day after the review went up, sending me a return label and asking me to send it right back to them. So I did that nicely today.
So you
But,
can't even juggle it on the podcast.
No,
You know,
I said
and
I'd
like
send it right back.
flip it around and then like drop it and say, "Oops."
Oh, but Josh, his pictures are better than reality.
True.
You
They're
get
more
more of a
saturated than
feel.
reality. Yep. If you use the vivid camera profile and then add about +5 or 10 saturation, that's what you get. You can see if you go to pcper.com, where we have these reviews on the internet, because PC Perspective is a website on the internet, if you're not familiar. We're not just a podcast. There is an exploded view of this card. And I will say, not that I have a significant issue with this, because I really didn't have time to disassemble and reassemble the card. But I did ask, since I was just borrowing the card, do you mind if I take this all apart and kind of dissect it and show people the PCB and the cooling system, and they said, please do not. Please refrain from doing that. I said, okay. So, and they had little stickers over the screws on the back, so they'd know if I tampered with it. So I said no. And then I noticed that Gamers Nexus has a teardown of this card on their YouTube channel. So apparently either they just did it anyway, or they got special permission that I could not get. So if you want to see what this card looks like beyond this 3D exploded view that we have at the website, check out Gamers Nexus on YouTube. But basically the breakdown of this is ultimately it's a slightly modified PCB design. I noticed it was a shorter PCB. Sapphire was telling me this was pretty much a stock PCB. It's definitely a different size. Some of the actual VRMs and components and that sort of thing you can see if you look at one of those breakdowns. But the big thing, of course, is the cooler, and it should be significantly quieter. I was told to expect about 10 dB lower noise than AMD's reference card. And temps are another matter. We'll look at the temps as well. But otherwise, this is a slightly overclocked card. And of course, I knew that going into this. I expected just a little bit higher performance, a couple percentage points maybe. And I was alarmed to see as I started putting all the numbers together to make these charts found in the review that that was not the case. It was actually 1 to 2 frames per second slower than the reference card. So I get a hold of Sapphire, and it's a late night phone call the night before launch because I hadn't seen any of this until I actually the night before when I was making these charts. Because I'm like, oh yeah, those numbers are similar. Yep, they're really close. And I didn't realize they were slightly in favor of the reference card. And we kind of investigated it. I ran some extended benchmarks while logging the clock speeds and looked at the reference clock speeds versus this card. And we have a overperforming reference card, it turns out. So don't go by these charts if you're simply looking for what kind of an edge you might get from this card. It is minimal though. Sapphire has a totally different line of cards if you go into the Nitro series that are going to be higher performing than this. This is mostly about the cooler. So I'll skip past benchmark results, which like I said, they're like 1 to 2 frames per second slower than our particular reference card, which by the way, if you were to look at Tech Power Up's database of the different BIOS versions that are out there, I don't believe they have a press BIOS in their collection. They do have a reference. And if you look at the clocks, it's supposed to be a 1400 megahertz base. I know that's lower than AMD's, what they call a base clock. Their base clock, as they explained it to us, was the kind of the lowest clock you will see in like a power virus test. If you're running Furmark on this thing, 1605 megahertz is about as low as it should be when you're actually using it for 3D acceleration. It has this nominal clock speed of 1400. The Sapphire card has a 1419 megahertz GPU clock at idle. Our reference card had 1434 at idle. And what I noticed head to head between the two cards was the reference card that we have, our press sample, was about 30 megahertz higher across the board than this Sapphire card. I don't know does anybody have any thoughts about that? Do you think that it's just kind of Silicon lottery, luck of the draw, or perhaps I got a tweaked BIOS with some higher than advertised clock speeds?
I think the margins on products right now and the way that they've designed them, that they push the ragged edge at normal kind of speeds and in normal circumstances. And so even though you've got a GPU running at 20C hotter, they're still running at that ragged edge even at lower. And so you just, I think we're just kind of hitting some speed limits here. And somebody was saying that the Radeon 5700s can actually run at 110C reliably. Maybe not great, maybe not boosting up, but they'll still possibly run that high, which is
that's what they're saying.
But
yeah, that's what they say.
But that, yeah, it's in between NVIDIA, AMD, Intel, and AMD again with graphics. I mean, they put so many things in there to extract as much performance as possible And I mean, there's little microcontrollers that control clock speeds and how much the chip heats up and how much power delivery is done. It's not a 1997 Voodoo graphics, which you're running at what was the voltage on that damn thing? It's like 2.9 volts. And why is my family making so much noise? And now my dogs are barking in the background. What the hell is going on?
It's an impressive amount of dish noise.
That is insane. Thank you, family, for doing dishes in the middle of my podcast. So for those listening,
their feedback
for those
really
listening,
good.
Picture my son in my kitchen throwing dishes onto shelves as loudly as possible. He's about 5'6", darker complexion, and he's throwing dishes literally on shelves. And so that's the noise you're hearing in the background. Yeah, I mean, it's just all those little controllers in there and power and that. I mean, it's just, that's why overclocking has sucked so badly until you start getting into some liquid nitrogen. And then it still sucks because you got to use liquid nitrogen. We don't have these, damn near 5.3 to 5.4 gigahertz overclocks on air. You just can't get there. It's you got to have extreme measures, and it's just basic physics. It's killing us, man. And I think that this is this is just an example of it. Yeah, you're going to have a cooler, quieter running card, but it may not necessarily run any faster unless you put some kind of roadblocks in there, like with NVIDIA and the RTX stuff. But even then, they kind of really didn't do that. But anyway.
Yeah, we're getting off track. What do you think about these clock speeds on my press sample, Josh? You just think it's luck of the draw?
I think there is luck of the draw. I mean, I don't think that, PC Per, while I'm proud of it, and I'm proud of working there, we are not the largest press group out there with the biggest amount of draw and eyes on us. And so why would AMD send you some Uber card? I think
because maybe I have a very special relationship with them and they want to take care of me.
Your card has an overperformance problem.
Most likely your card knew it was going to a smaller group rather than, the Tom's Hardwares and the PC Magazine and Linus Tech Tips. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to show these guys. I'm going to show them. You can't keep the little man down. And it didn't. And it overperformed. It was the Josh Allen of video cards.
But it only overperformed by a very slight margin. Yeah. And it could get very warm too. So very briefly recapping the end of this review for whatever reason, temperatures were a little bit lower. I need to enact some sort of, or adopt, whichever term is correct, some sort of more strenuous testing for temperatures, because just running through a known benchmark and recording the temps above ambient is just not enough when you have a card that it doesn't give it enough time to get hot, I guess. Even though I'm doing everything the same way, I have some ideas for improving GPU reviews going forward, but doing like a half hour to an hour, I guess, makes more sense for long-term frequency scaling and temperatures, because obviously you're not just gaming for 15 or 20 minutes unless you have severe attention deficit problems like me. But yeah, I mean, the power consumption numbers were close. I mean, it was a little bit higher than the reference, which is interesting. So my reference card at load only pulled 302 total system, which includes a i7 9700K and 32 gigs of RAM and stuff like that.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, and then the 317 for the pulse. So it was pulling a little bit more, but that's what I expected from a so-called factory overclocked card. So regardless of the whole performance deficit, all that, it was fine. It was within kind of this window, and temps were lower. Even with my brief temperature testing, temps were a couple of C lower, edge temp and hotspot. But the big story, it was almost exactly the 10 dB lower they promised. It was slightly more. It was like 10.5 dB lower, 38.3 dBA from 12 inches away on an open test bed. Just so you know what my testing methodology is. This test bed right here, I have a tripod, point the noise meter directly at it, and from that short of a distance, it was still only 38.3 dBA with its default BIOS switch setting. This card actually has two settings, one with a more aggressive fan profile than the other one, similar to what we saw with that EVGA Hydro card we looked at a couple weeks ago. So instead of actually changing the clock frequencies, it just changes the fan curve. But you can, of course, manually tweak the fan curve. And one interesting thing about that, speaking of like software tweaks, tricks software is Sapphire's suite. They gave us a pre-release version of it. It wasn't fully working, has a nice, clean, kind of toned down interface. What was working on it was their new Tricks boost. So there's going to be a full version of this releasing soon if it hasn't already. And once they get all the rest of the kinks worked out. But the Tricks boost is interesting because it's basically the principle of DLSS, but instead of using AI training to upscale a lower internal resolution where it's actually being rendered at, say, 60 or 70% of the final resolution, and then being upscaled using the magic of deep learning and artificial intelligence, this is simply on a scale of, you can choose anywhere from 70 to 99% scaling, or resolution. So if you're at, the example was if you chose 90% quality, the 2560 by 1440 game would actually be rendered at 30 or 2304 by 1296, which is 10% lower, and then upscaled when it hits your monitor. And if you're using either DX9, DX12, or Vulkan, you can enable Radeon image sharpening, and you can actually flip the switch right inside the Trick software to do that for you. And when you enable this, the screen flickers for a second, it comes back. When you go into the game, choose your new sort of custom resolution. In this case, it was 2304 by 1296 that I chose, and you run your game. And that 10% drop in internal resolution is so slight, especially when you couple it with, and I tried a couple of DX titles or DX12 titles so I could use the Radeon image sharpening. And I thought maybe I was seeing some stuff in the color, like maybe there was a little bit more averaging in the color information. It was hard to tell. Anything in motion, I couldn't tell at all. But it's an interesting idea. Like, give people this, hey, you can downscale the internal resolution of the game just a little bit, just enough to raise frames per second. I'm talking this literally raised at about 10 FPS in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, for example. So you can get yourself a nice boost with the exact same perceptible image quality for video, like for actual gameplay in motion. And I think it'll probably take, I'm sure Digital Foundry or somebody will come out with an analysis of this and show what the actual stills look like if they have time to do that. But I thought about doing that, but really, yeah, if you look at something that's a lower resolution internally that's upscaled and you zoom in closely enough on it, you will see a difference in screenshots, but I didn't see a difference in practice. So I thought that was kind of a cool idea that nobody else has done.
Performance for free is awesome.
Yes,
yeah, and I don't think you're. I would love it if everybody could try this. But I had to send the card back, and it only works on Sapphire cards. And Radeon image sharpening only works on Navi.
Yeah.
So
that is an interesting option from a third party that we had not really expected.
Yeah.
Did you expect it?
Who, me? No.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yes, because
it would be an AMD thing initially.
It was in the reviewer's guide, Josh. So I did expect it.
Wow.
When I actually ran the test at about 3:00 in the morning, the morning of the.
No, I'm talking. If you originally had when Navi back in June.
Oh no!
Would you have expected this kind of functionality from a third party and not AMD?
No, not at all. I thought that when I saw this at first, I thought, oh, this is an easy way to enable Radeon image sharpening. That's nice. And then I realized that it was actually doing both. Because the whole idea of Radeon image sharpening is that you could take, say, a nice 4K monitor, and you maybe don't want to game at 4K because you'd like a higher frame rate, you'd like better performance. But if you've ever looked at a monitor closely, and if you're not really sensitive to it, maybe this doesn't affect you like it does me, but I can always tell if I'm not looking at native resolution on a display.
Yeah,
it's too close to my face.
To figure out.
Yeah, because you see a certain softness to everything.
Well, there's anti-aliasing going on that shouldn't be there.
That's true.
Yeah. A certain softness.
A certain softness. And
I like a certain softness.
You could say that. Right.
Yeah.
My toilet paper.
It's like you expect
a certain softness.
Yeah, and you don't want it to be too hard, too harsh.
No.
But at the same time, too soft, it's not going to be as effective.
Yeah, I mean, because you know what, you can't have it break apart in your hands when you're doing the necessary paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
Makes for a sticky situation.
Just curious how far you're going to go with it.
Yeah, I think it went about as far as it. It went about as far as it should have gone, and then a little bit further,
and then just over the line.
Yep, the sticky situation
do.
part. Yeah. So anyway, enough about this
Thank you,
card.
Jim.
It's interesting, and let's move on.
Is he ready with those? Does he know when to bring those up? Because that's fast.
No,
He's got
Essentially every 2 minutes.
Yeah.
For first-time listeners of the show, I don't know if you think we're being spontaneous, and sometimes the writing is better than other weeks, but the team of writers that work very hard, by the way, to make this show possible, we're completely scripted. So everything that I'm reading is actually on a script on a teleprompter in front of me. It's an iPad that I use as a teleprompter, but you know what I'm saying.
I'm worried you're referring to yourself as a team.
Yeah, or
I am.
third person.
Both
are awkward.
It is awkward. Talking to yourself is awkward, and I'm not going to say it has never happened before. Let's move on to discussion of Corsair, who we talked about this, I think, at the end of May when they officially launched Hydro X. And Hydro X is their full line of custom cooling, liquid cooling. And it's not just like a kit that has like expansion capabilities. It's nothing to do with all-in-one liquid coolers, which of course Corsair is rather famous for. I think the H100 is a legendary cooler in the annals of time during the height of the AIO explosion. But Hydro X is former EK engineers working at Corsair to bring you high quality and absolutely more RGBs than you can shake a stick at in every component. It is rather remarkable. And I've seen some other water blocks that have some RGB, which look really cool. I think it was Fantex that's had a couple of announcements recently where it's like a clear top plate and RGB goodness going on in there. If you're into that sort of thing, and not everybody is. But these are a little bit more subtle with the way they're designed. You wouldn't know it just looking at like the GPU block, that if you were to plug this into the controller and actually enable RGB lighting, that this can be any number of colors. And we're talking about addressable RGBs, not just one color. RGBs around the perimeter of things that provide you with the ability to create patterns or choose individual color zones or do whatever you want. You can have like a scrolling marquee where you have like lights that in order of your components scroll through as the liquid flows through the system. But enough about RGBs. It was my first time ever building a loop, first of all. So when I actually sat down to review this, I was very intimidated. And I watched some videos that are out there, read some stuff, and it's a little disconcerting for the absolute beginner like me, because I didn't have anybody here with me who'd done this before. And seeing that there's different schools of thought. Like some people think there's an absolute rigid standard about what order you put everything, as far as the pump, reservoir, radiators, which block goes first. There's parallel flow. There's I don't know what the other term is, like single-ended. Whatever I ended up doing was the absolute simplest loop I could come up with. Does anybody on the show other than me have any experience with custom liquid cooling at all?
Yep, a little bit.
Maury,
You do,
but he's not on the show.
not on this episode. I should have had him on this episode. Actually, I should have
I
had
shower
Maury review this,
regularly.
but-
That's
Okay.
good. I actually, to tell you the truth, I've been calling people to just look at your photography because they didn't even know what they were looking at. I'm just like, this is some really nice photography of this stuff. This is pretty darn sweet.
That's
And
really
some of
that's my comfort
See,
zone.
that's a radar phased array from Area 51 that was recovered from a 1949 flying saucer. And
Repurpose.
Are you sure it was the 49 crash? Was it the 49 crash or the one that came after
Sure.
that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, some of these pictures, fabulous. Just fabulous. Bokeh.
Thanks.
Yep.
It's a Nikon micro lens. It's actually, if you're looking at, this is the camera I use. This is a D5100 DSLR that I got years ago on clearance at the retailer I worked for. And I I just used my AFS Micro Nikkor 40 millimeter. It's a 2.8 f2.8 lens, so it's just enough. Like it's not really meant for. It's kind of a interesting lens, but we don't have to talk about lenses.
Right. But more about water cooling. You were
More
asking
about water cooling.
Yeah. So I think you'd said something, and somebody just mentioned it in chat. Is actually the order doesn't matter, except I did read about the Corsair kit. And they actually have to know the order in their IQ software due to the lighting. It's nothing to do with the water flow. It's actually so that they can synchronize, and so that you can kind of get that effect that kind of goes from one to the other, just so that they know which element they're traversing through in order to light you up appropriately. I actually went through their configurator too, by the way, which is really awesome. Their online tool, very cool.
It's super polished, and they're not the first. Really, I don't think. EK has one, and I went through that too. But EK's is a little bit more towards an advanced user, I think, because you're getting more just lists, and it's like black text on a white screen. You have a little bit of visual to help you see what you're doing and what you're getting in the end. But the Corsair it looks like it's a very polished web application it has visuals all the way through to guide you. And I was very impressed with how polished that is. I was using that configurator from the day that it launched.
And it's not just for Corsair.
They are a marketing machine. Sorry to talk over you, Brett, but I needed to throw that in because Corsair, their marketing, strong. If you didn't notice.
I just wanted to say that their equipment or their configurator is actually well stocked with third-party cases and third-party motherboards, and they've got Z370, Z390 stuff, Fantex cases. I was just playing around with it, and they won't show a picture of everything, but they do kind of illustrate it when they don't have the exact photograph. So highly recommend it if you guys want to just go play around with it. It's not cheap. I mean, I configured a few things just for some RGBs, fans, water block for the CPU, of course, a couple different graphics cards and things like that. And it was pushing $700.
Yeah.
So do they have an audio option where they describe in audio terms what you're looking at and configuring?
We're gonna dub that in the edit. We're gonna fully describe that later.
The radiator goes.
Take your 3/4 inch spigot and screw it counterclockwise.
This is not this kind of podcast.
I would have loved to listen to something like this while I was building it, Josh. Where were you?
If only.
Whispering into my ears as I connected compression.
ASMR water cooling.
Yes.
Construction. Yes. This is an untapped reservoir of potential monetary improvements.
Imagine the sound of the water pouring into the reservoir.
As I squeeze the plastic tube with the
Why do I
gooseneck.
encourage this? I shouldn't even.
I know.
I should stop.
I encountered some resistance as I pushed the flexible tubing.
No, you're doing it. You're doing it now. This is you.
I slowly slid my compression ring down, and it met with a metallic clink
from the tubing. As it
gave a little bit, but not too much. All right.
Where is the kid?
Oh, Lord.
You're listening to the final episode of the PC Perspective podcast. We made it this far. Friends. Jeremy, I haven't heard enough of Jeremy. I want to hear more of Jeremy's dulcet tones from Canada. What do you think about this? Is this relevant anymore? Do you like this?
To be honest, when you first showed us that picture, it scared the hell out of me. Is just a huge amount of work and a lot of leaky things, possibly because having never put one of these together before, I would be concerned about how I would do without somebody talking me through the instructions. The fact that they constantly saying, no, I said the other way, recalculating, would have ruined the experience, though. If you want fancy, though, and someone mentioned that Maury is good at this because that's what he does. He builds cases, brings them down to QuakeCon and shows them off and tries to win contests because he builds beautiful things. This is a good chance for someone who isn't interested in, measuring out tubing, cutting it, and doing all that to dip their toes into it, more or less.
Good Lord, man. You did that by yourself? I
know.
No, not you. Sebastian, the other one.
Yes, I'm also
looking
in
at
shock.
the pictures. I'm looking at the pictures. It's like somebody who's done this for the first time and just takes their time and thinks about it can have a visually stunning setup.
Simulating.
Here's what's awesome about it, because I did all of this dry, of course. I played around with the different.
You should have had a drink
I
or
thought
two
we weren't
beforehand.
going there anymore. You got to use a little lube and the ends of. Never mind.
Hey, I had all my clothes on, okay, Josh. So that would just be a mess. But you can set all this up. You can stage it out. I did some rough estimates about the actual tubing length that I needed and all that kind of stuff. And there are different connectors. We got a sampling of everything. So there's the standard compression fittings, and then there were some 90-degree angle adapters. There were some 45-degree angle adapters that rotated, so you could get different angles off of it. I used one of those on the CPU block, and you can basically there's a little bit of wiggle room, basically, especially if you're using some of these angle adapters. And once I got a rough idea of the what I needed, I started fitting it all together on my open test bench. And long before I ever introduced any of the liquid into the system at all. So I was confident I had everything completely tight and everything was the right length long before I ever filled the reservoir. And I think there are still micro bubbles in the reservoir. I don't know how to get rid of those. Not as many, but I guess I haven't used the system enough. They say, because if you look at some of the pictures in the review, you'll see these little bubbles all over. It looks like carbonated liquid, like Sprite is filling my reservoir. And while I did use
it taste like
some,
Sprite?
I only used some Sprite when I ran out of the actual coolant. So hopefully that will eventually work its way through the system. I didn't actually, but performance. That was the thing. Not only does it look cool, and it has all these addressable RGBs, which you can do all sorts of things with, but it actually is a liquid cooling system. So I did some quick numbers. I had taken, and we talked about the fears of things leaking and stuff, which hasn't happened at all, but I just went for it. I took the 3900X, the only one we have, the unobtainable 3900X Ryzen processor, and I used that with the AM4 water block. And I took the most expensive GPU that we have, which is the 2080 Ti Founders Edition, and I threw that in there too. I took the stock cooler off of that, put the block on it, and the performance before I did all of these modifications, when I just had it on the test bench with AMD's Wraith Prism cooler, which is, of course, the stock cooler is not what you're going to go with for high performance with the 3900X, but it does okay. It's like 89C under load. But in this loop, and I really want to readdress this loop, I want to go in and add the second radiator because I have two radiators. I want to modify the layout a little bit. But with the layout the way that it was in the pictures that you see, the fluid was coming from the pump into the GPU block first, from the GPU block into the CPU block. So my CPU temps were never going to be as low as they could be if the CPU either had its own rad or if I had it go into the CPU block first. Mm-hmm. So GPU temps under load.
Wait, seriously, it really doesn't matter. The temperature of the liquid equalizes after a period of time. So, I mean, you could have two radiators and you might be able to get a little bit more, cooling out of it. But, after a while, the liquid gets to be the same temperature. Order doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's what I'd read too. And then I'm like, but even with this custom loop, my temperatures with the 3900X were still like 75C. They dropped almost 15 degrees, which is huge, but that's against the stock cooler. I haven't put a big air cooler on the 3900X yet. Like the Be Quiet Dark Rock Pro 4 that I have here I was going to put on that. So it was significant, and I was running, top speed at like 75C with the 3900X in a room that was 26 degrees C. So the deltas are very good. The GPU was astonishing to me. And that's why I started to think, well, maybe the order does matter, because this 2080 Ti, which was like 75 to 77 degrees on the open test bench under load before adding a block, with this system, it was hitting 47, 48 under full load. So just dramatically lower temperatures, and the design of the block was outstanding. It was very well machined. I was a little worried because if you see in some of the photos when I first took the GPU apart and cleaned everything up, the stock cooler uses some sort of compound in between the chokes and the original heatsink. And on the block from Corsair, there was simply pre-applied thermal pads for the actual VRMs and pre-applied thermal interface material for the GPU itself. There were cavities for the chokes, but there was not any kind of material cushioning the chokes in there. But I guess there was just enough of an air gap so they weren't actually making contact. And apparently chokes don't really generate a lot of heat. It's the VRMs you need to worry about.
Yep.
So the results speak for themselves. The numbers are crazy. I needed to do a little bit more testing and actually record like VRM temps, before and after and stuff. But it's a remarkable system for a first effort. It doesn't nothing about this, from packaging to contents, the actual build quality, the performance, the way that it looks. I mean, pricing out an EK system, which was more expensive, by the way, and far less visually stunning, because even the addressable RGBs that they have, they're not quite to the same level. Like this Corsair system was designed pretty much from the ground up, it looks like, to showcase addressable RGB lighting. And it's kind of crazy. But so if you've got the same budget that somebody might be using to buy a high-end graphics card, like for the price of an RTX 2080 Super, you could buy a liquid cooling system instead, and they would get you tremendous performance and look amazing. It is intimidating, and for the first-time builder like me, it took a while. I took my time, ended up working out just fine, but it's not for everybody. That's what I said in the review. It's just not for everyone. It looks amazing. It's like the ultimate accessory you can do for your build. And anytime you see those custom build photos, I've always admired, especially hard tubing, some of the crazy things people do with PC builds. But it's an impressive effort from Corsair.
I assume they included some sort of like biocide or something in the kit, right? You used straight up water in it?
No. I used, I'm looking for the bottle. I have a couple bottles of their coolant. They offer it in different colors. I just have the clear coolant, but it smelled kind of like has some sort of a solvent in it, and it was slightly viscous. So I'll have to actually grab that and see. Oh, here we go.
You didn't taste it?
I did not. It had a kind of a smell. It's XL5
you?
performance coolant. Long-lasting pre-mixed performance coolant, ready to go right out of the bottle. It's let's see here.
Do you remember
water,
back in the day,
10%
with
glycerol
with their first product, water cooling product?
Whose?
Corsair.
Oh,
what was their first one?
It was really interesting. And they had this, it wasn't quite an all-in-one thing, but they had this, microfiber, micro channel block. And unfortunately, they mixed metals. And so these people had these awesome temperatures at the beginning. And then suddenly everything kept going up and up and up and up and up and up and until finally that they were literally boiling the CPU, and someone took apart the Corsair, kind of all-in-one thing, and it was all green because they had nickel components with copper, and it just oxidized all of the copper in the CPU cooler heat sink, and it blocked all of the channels. So this is this is a nice improvement, but of course that was almost 15 years ago, which was a long time. I mean, especially, if you think that, you're living in 1989 and you think back to 1974 and all the changes that happened there, that's essentially the same thing. Yeah. They've learned a lot in that time. Electromigration of metal.
I want to add
jumping, nice conductor circulating around for ions and electrons.
Not good.
Electricity, it's a wonderful thing.
I want to add that GERT Tracker in our Discord chat pointed out that with the GPU block, I was getting direct contact with the GPU die, but with the CPU, I'm going through that heat spreader. So the internal connect, like the actual TIM they're using will affect that. Like it's not quite as efficient. So obviously the next step is to delid the 3900X clearly, and then I'll get the
Good
real
luck with that.
performance. So yeah, direct eye cooling, of course. Jordan in our chat is a liar. I will just say that right now. I don't believe you. You did not delid your 3900X, and I don't think you're even using water cooling. But at this point, I think it's time to take a little bit of a break and thank this week's podcast sponsor.
This week's sponsor is Capterra. Now, if you have a business, you need software. There's almost no business out there these days that doesn't either require or at least benefit from having good software. Now, maybe it's basic software. It's just stuff like word processing, emails, customer database management, stuff like that. Maybe it's more specific, stuff for managing medical records, stuff for managing employees in the field. Regardless, how do you find the software you need? Maybe you know what you need, like you know that there's a particular type of software and you just need to make a choice between brands or developers. Maybe you don't even know what's out there for your business. How do you go about finding it? And then once you find something, how do you know it's good? How do you know that it meets your needs or that it's quality? Well, that's where Capterra comes in. Capterra is the leading free online resource to help you find the best software solution for your business. It features over 950,000 reviews of real software products from real users and enables you to discover everything you need to make an informed decision on acquiring that software for your business. Search through more than 700 specific categories of software, everything from project management, email marketing, to yoga management software. And then read those real reviews. Get that real, valuable feedback, reviews you can trust from people who are actually using the software. No matter what kind of software your business needs, Capterra makes it easy to discover the right solution fast. Now, here's how you use it. It's 100% free. Just go to capterra.com/PCPer. That's CAPTERRA.com/PCPer. And you can start browsing right away. There's no sign up. There's no credit card. There's no payment. It's 100% free for you to use. Start browsing through the categories. Search for a specific type of software. Either way, you're going to find tons of options with easy to read entries for each software product. And then you can read those real reviews, get that valuable feedback. So if you have any type of business and you're looking for software, if it's a new business or an existing business, you can find the software you need. You can find new software solutions that'll help improve your business and keep your employees and your customers happy. Join the millions of people who use Capterra each month to find the right tools for their business. That's capterra.com/PCPer, CAPTERRA.com/PCPer. Start searching. Find the software that's going to make your business run better. Capterra, software selection simplified. And we thank Capterra for their support of the PC Perspective podcast.
Thank you, Jim. And thank you to our sponsor. Let's move into news of the week. Not a whole lot of stories. And you know what? This might as well be called the PCI Express 4.0 segment of the podcast. Because there was a lot of storage news in the last week. There was some other kind of things going on, but the things that stood out to me anyway were storage.
And you know what? If there was a killer application for PCI 4.0, it's not graphics.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really inter CPU communication.
Audio.
No,
it is audio.
Okay,
and you've never heard uncompressed sound like you can get with PCI Express 4.0.
No, in fact,
gigabytes per second.
PCI 4.0
it's
was
reading
was
camera
designed.
cards.
Not only, well, no, with the audio, they designed PCI 4.0 to use this special nickel-plated copper leads from the CPU to the audio, and that in fact makes your packets run a little clearer, so your audio is just pristine.
You can really hear the difference. It depends on the PCB.
$175 for 15 inches of this PCIe 4.0 leads.
That's cheap. Cheap at half the price.
I know. It's Denon is they're making a killing on this.
Denon makes motherboards now? Interesting. They've entered the realm.
Just the PCI 4 interconnect to audio.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
They're specializing.
Now, you joke
Yeah.
about this, but I guarantee there will be such a product soon.
Oxygen-free copper, all that.
Oh yeah.
Because there are
You
USB
do remember the
conditioners out there.
Ooh,
I think it
Monster
was
Cable.
Denon.
Monster cable, man. Yeah.
No,
You know where I was
Denon
going.
had a $250 Cat 5e cable that was this long.
Yep.
Well, I'm sure it was very special.
Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
That has nothing on the AudioQuest Ethernet
Specially
cable. that I've seen.
It does
aligned
not.
electrons.
Anyway.
You joke.
Oh, here it
but
is.
That's
Yeah,
that's
see,
not
there
a-
it is.
not
There it
a
is. Denon. Yeah. I'm not screwing around.
No, it's true.
Yeah. $500 for a little chunk of Ethernet cable. But it was nicely braided for the time.
What were we talking about again? Oh yes,
French
Josh.
PCIe 4.0.
Josh, you're a big
Me.
fan of Phison and their PCI Express 4.0 goodness. are you
I
not?
wouldn't say that I'm a big fan of them. However,
Oh, okay.
I appreciate what they've done for the industry. And AMD, who apparently gave them about $15 million to help develop the
Interesting.
PCIe
interesting.
4.0, E16 controller. They are the first to capitalize on this, and they're selling some products. Their friends Sabrent, Corsair, Gigabyte, others, they're all using this controller, which is almost drop in from the E12. There's too many E's. There's the E12, 16, and then the 18, which is going to be the 19, which is lower power. Anyway,
Well, you know what? Yeah, like 19 is lower power, but look at the 18. To quote,
the 18
to paraphrase,
is actually a redesign. It is a redesign, and they've
to paraphrase-
increased the performance. Go ahead.
to paraphrase Bill Gates when talking about Steve Jobs' next computer system, developed for
Nobody
it.
needs
I'll
more
piss
than
on it.
640K. What?
No, he said I'll piss on it. And
Oh.
that's what I say about the 16. You know what? The 16 is cute. Piss on it. I want the 18. Because why would you settle for 4 or 5 gigabytes per second when you could have 7, baby? 7 gigabytes per second on the same interface. And look at if you're looking at the website, look at the specs for this thing. I made a beautiful table. I worked hard on this table, by the way.
did.
I didn't just
You did.
screenshot the table on their website. I made my own. So you could like search it.
1 million
select
ops
text and stuff. Look at that. 1
million ops.
IOPS.
Yep.
And 8 channels of 32 CE. So those numbers are the same, but 1,200 megatransfers per channel, up to
what's
8
kind of interesting?
terabytes.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's Okay. The E12. Is that correct? E14, E12, and E16
E13?
are based on 28 nanometer process technology. The E18 was it 14 or 12?
14 or 12.
12
what?
nanometer TSMC.
12, yeah.
And so the power on the latest E16 is something like, well, they say 6 watts TDP, but I think that is being generous. I would say it's probably in 10 to 12 watt TDP because of the amount of heat coming out. But they're
But look at this.
advertising
Look at the
this
numbers
as-
for this one.
as 3 watt TDP.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Half.
a massive, it's more than half because think of 28 nanometer planar, and if they're using 12 nanometer TSMC, it's FinFET. And so they're going to get some real power savings here. And, I don't know the clocks that they're doing, but, they're going to get some better clock speeds throughout. And that's probably where they're getting 7 gigabytes per second with 1 million IOPS. That's awesome. We needed that like now. These are numbers that maybe Samsung can have in January or February of 2020. But hopefully, Phison is actually able to execute on this, get out the firmware and the products and get it rolling to customers in a short amount of time. And that being like within 3 months. We'll see. But it's exciting because this is a true next generation. It's not just like, hey, we're taking this E12 controller and we're going to make it PCIe 4.0. And so we're going to get, these sequential reads up to 5 gigabytes per second. No, we're going to add another core to it. It's going to be faster. It's going to be more power efficient. And in many circumstances, it's going to perform what we've done previously on even just PCIe 3.0. So it's a nice thing.
Anybody else with thoughts about this before we move on to the next PCI Express 4.0 story?
Yeah. When can we raid these?
Ah,
Yeah.
not soon
Somebody
enough.
needs to have that bridge chip, splitter.
I have
Mass
one
Media has not done
PCIe
that
4 drive here. I just have this one Corsair drive here.
Yeah, I've got the Sabrid.
I need another one, but I think it's around here somewhere. Oh, here we go. Let me grab this. Because there are devices. There are devices that will let you connect more than one, even to one PCI Express slot. Like
this thing,
M.2 Expander Z Gen 4 with active cooling. You can put a couple of PCI.
That is a Gen 4?
Yeah,
Expander?
Gen 4. Yeah.
Nice.
It says it right on the back. Look, right on the front. Look at that.
That's from what's the Godlike, right?
Yeah. I don't know if they sell it separately or not. It comes with the Godlike board. So if you're on the fence about which $700 X570 board to get, this one has the Expander Z Gen 4 M.2 thing. But a lot of these have multiple M.2 anyway. So if you just buy a couple of these, I have not tried to raid them yet because, as I said, I don't have more than one drive. But speaking of drives, Samsung, Tim actually posted this for us. Samsung readies the PM1733 PCIe 4.0 SSD and high capacity memory for AMD EPYC servers. I imagine the performance of this will be rather high. And I hope that them getting out enterprise.
5 million IOPS.
Do you think it would be beyond IO Magic?
I don't know.
If only Alan was here. If only Alan was here, he would talk about the Magic people and Steve Jobs. Not Steve Jobs, but the Woz.
Well, he would talk about Steve Jobs, I'm sure.
Sure, why not?
We'll talk about Steve Jobs too. That's in hour 2 of the podcast. Our retrospective on the mid-1980s in the world of computers. I'm looking at the numbers here. They're using their own Gen 5 VNAND flash. It's TLC. I mean, this is all enterprise stuff. I'm just hoping that this trickles down and that they actually end up coming out with their own consumer M.2 PCIe 4 drive. That'll be very interesting to me to see what they can do, because right now Phison's the only game in town. I don't think Silicon Motion is any closer to releasing. They were talking next year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who else has a controller.
Nobody has anything on their calendar for this year. It's Phison. Yeah. They've cornered the PCIe 4.0 market for storage right now, and we'll see how well they capitalize on that, because the E18, if it performs as they are promising, then that's going to be hard to beat.
It's going to be epic.
Oh, you went there.
Yep, I did.
Epic.
I have no shame. Hey, Jeremy, do you like looking at washed out slides from a projector in a very bright boardroom?
It brings I know back many memories.
Mm-hmm. So you posted about something absolutely unbelievable. Intel jumping on the PCIe 4.0 bandwagon. I thought there was 5. I thought they were just leapfrogging PCIe 4 and going on to 5.
Yep. PCIe 4.0 was a joke, and they were just going straight to 5.
Yeah.
There shall be no 4.
Right.
Except on a NUC, apparently. So it's a brand new Phantom Canyon concept NUC, which is using, as of yet unreleased, Phantom Canyon Tiger Lake. I think it's Tiger Lake is this one chip. And I mean, honestly, it's for a NUC kind of kick ass. I mean, a 1660 Ti or a 2060, depending on which one you go with. Two DIMMs up to 64 gigs, pair of M.2 4.0 NVMe connectors.
It's got to be a
Thunderbolt 3,
typo.
just about everything. I mean, they must have just meant to type 5.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It says rate capable, by the way.
Logo. Yes, it does.
And
of course, now the Skull Trail logo is RGB.
For those listening, if you remember the other, like the Skull Trail NUC, the bigger It's the bigger, wider form factor. It kind of looks like a set-top box. It looks kind of like an NVIDIA Shield, but a little bit taller. This is not the little square Intel Nook like this thing right here in my hands. Like this is like your consumer Nook. This is bigger, it's wider.
Looks like about 2.5 times the size.
Yeah, a more powerful CPU. But the dates on this though, like they're talking 2021. It's kind of late to the game. I'm hoping that's more like the 2020 timeframe for them, but because right now,
well,
this is one of the newest ones, and this is 8th gen.
Yeah.
So they have not moved on to 9th gen that I've seen from the consumer level.
Well, and this isn't. This is skipping a couple of generations because Ice Lake, sort of. Then there's Cooper Lake, and then there's going to be this one, which is Tiger Lake, because we need more lakes. So many freaking lakes. I think there's a Comet Lake in there too somewhere, but not for the lower end stuff.
I need to study a roadmap because I do not have these code names down at all.
It's not a map anymore. It's a portage route.
Okay. So yeah, that's the Phantom, the Phantom Canyon concept. I know there's a different one floating around out there. This one was via Fanless Tech, but isn't there a larger form factor Nook concept coming that actually uses one of their own discrete graphics cards?
Yeah, Chip Hell shows it. It looks like one of those external GPU enclosures.
Okay, yeah.
And it's tall and long as opposed to sitting on the side. And that, again, just concept.
And it's off to get the friction on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, think Dan Case A4 SFX, right? So then it's maybe a little bit smaller than that, but that sort of compact shoebox sized thing. That's interesting.
Which they've stuck a Quadro in for some reason.
Yeah. Right. Well, because they don't have... What does that mean, that the Intel discrete graphics will just be a licensed rebadged Quadro card? No. They wouldn't have hired all those people to do that. What's next?
They're not putting AMD graphics on it again. So there.
No. Well, I mean, that relationship was fruitful for them. I mean, Raja worked with Intel, did that project. Then he left the one processor. Intel.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Shocker. Apple, shocking. Speaking of shocking,
nice.
Apple continues to startle and surprise with their seeming disregard for right to repair. Well, yeah, customers. So Jeremy, please enlighten us about what's the latest from Apple and changing your own iPhone battery.
Yeah, so if you had the temerity to ask somebody other than a licensed genius to change your battery with a licensed battery, which essentially has the same sort of microcontroller in it that HP and the printer ink got in so much trouble for just a few brief years ago, you will no longer be able to see your battery health. It will just tell you that it needs to be serviced, even though it is perfect. And to make it even better, Apple has sort of said, well, you know what? If you do, do this, we'll forgive you, and you can bring it into one of our stores and pay us to change the little bit of code on the software on the battery so that it'll now tell you if it's healthy or not.
I think that's
officially. They didn't say how much they were going to charge for that.
They'll diddle it. They'll just...
Yes. Yeah. So it's not that the battery is not proper. It's because Apple would not hand you back a phone if they said, yeah, no, this one, this is the reason you're not allowed to bring our stuff on planes right now. So we're not going to let you have that. No, it's a perfectly valid battery. They just need to add whatever the serial is on it to their list of batteries you're permitted to use.
I watched a video on this from Louis Rossman, who did a huge breakdown of it and had a discussion roundtable with a bunch of other third-party repair people in the industry. And he has an example that is right down to even if you take a fresh battery out of a brand new phone and transfer it over to a different phone, it'll drop into that same, service mode. So it's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. You're spot on.
We need a way. It's like diagnostic codes on a car. We need a way to go in and reset that. If you change your own oil, you have to know how to reset that And on some newer cars, it's buried in like a sub menu on your heads-up display.
Ask
But
a
hey,
John
at
Deere
least-
owner about that kind of crap.
They're going to be unsoldering the little microcontroller from the dead battery and moving it over to the good or the newer cells, and that's how they're going to get around it for third-party repair anyway.
Speaking of shocking things and bad
There it is.
segues, Jeremy.
I actually own it.
Oh, but here we go.
Oh,
System Shock 2.
it's-
CD-ROM. Now, do you have a
Here,
CD-ROM
wait,
drive
wait.
in your current system?
No, but in case anybody needs the, let me see if I can get it to
Yeah,
focus.
how to
Wait, you have a product ID code
turn
down
left,
there or something?
walk backwards.
No,
lean
it's
forward.
There you go.
Next weapon.
Yep.
Oh.
I toast.
I
I
didn't have
toast
time
you,
to
sir.
find mine.
I toast you. Hey, nice.
If I'd had time, I might even be able to find the box.
I guarantee Josh, if anybody
Do you have
still
the
has a
2.3
CD-ROM
update?
drive in there. Josh, please tell me you have a working CD-ROM drive in your system right now.
Yes, I've got two.
Okay, thank you.
two optical
Thank
I have a
drives.
USB
God.
one. I have a USB
Doesn't
one.
count.
That
Internal
doesn't
only.
count. The internal only, yes, that is correct.
I have one in this one and one networked from the other PC.
I don't just
Because why
have
wouldn't
one.
you share it?
I don't just have one system with internal CD-ROM drives. I have a collection of CDs with some CD-ROM drives. Systems,
Oh wait,
CDs.
did you
whatever
mean
I was saying.
systems that were turned off? Because I've got one of those.
No.
You mean ones
Oh,
that aren't
okay.
on?
You'd have to be
No,
using
I mean, it
it.
has to be your everyday PC needs to have a CD
Okay.
drive.
No, I'm still a loser.
If you care, you would have one. Although the enhanced edition of System Shock probably won't require a CD-ROM drive, will it?
No.
But it will make the noise occasionally just to make sure that you get the full experience, hopefully.
You know what? I miss hard drive sounds. Not the whine, but I wouldn't mind if maybe there was a little device that would kind of synchronize with you could like go off
Like the
your hard drive
noisemakers
activity.
on an electric car.
Yeah, I want to
So it
hear my hard
feels
drive
like it's
churning away off of my M.2 SSD. It's little seek noises.
Windows never stopped with that. It was just endless.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Background activity. Can you imagine
Now
what it would
it's
be like in Windows 10? Every second of the day, there's like 3 or 4 instances of the Edge browser in the background for no
Now,
reason, even though you don't even use it.
imagine
Plus, like 3 instances of Cortana.
about what
Having
it's
done
doing to
that
your
on a
SSDs,
laptop,
though.
yes. Well, that's the other problem.
Picks of the week. Jeremy, you're first. What did you have
God,
for
am
us?
I? So, beer fridges are a thing, but they're kind of old and busted nowadays because you don't really know how much beer you got. You might run out. It's kind of hard to know which one you're going to be pulling without some proper labeling. So, why not build yourself a nice little system with a microcontroller in it that will not just tell you exactly what beer is coming out, but how much you got left, the temperature, the PSI of the gas, how much gas you've got left, and just about friggin' everything else you'd want. And so this is a project over at Hackaday where he walks you through the entire design. There are other ways you can go about figuring out how to set up your freezer or fridge and
Sweet
Curious.
breadboard, man.
But yeah, and it's pretty. He's got 3D printer STIs so that the end final product will look nice. And so, on the plus side, hey, beer. But you're going to have to work a bit for it. This is so much better than drilling a hole in the front of a fridge and installing a beer handle. So if you like draft and you got some free time, and honestly, the component list, as long as you're willing to shop around a little bit, is not that stupidly expensive. You could have a lot of fun with this.
Excellent.
I'm always up for tapping things.
Josh, speaking
Me?
of things,
Okay, so I was inspired by you last week and your review, and I thought, I've been looking for a back bias solution for my monitor for a long time. This one's available. There was one that I'd been keeping track of, but it was like never available, and they didn't know when it was gonna be. But this had all the same kind of features, and it was a good thing. It was the NZ XT Hue 2. I mean, it's not a perfect product. but it's pretty good. The only issue I really have with it is there is a little bit of latency when you're using like ambient setting where it kind of reflects what is on your screen. It's not always perfect with that, and it's not always really fast, but once you start really getting into a game, you don't notice it as much, or with video, but it's just that first little bit. But otherwise, it it provides what you kind of ask it. I mean, it bounces all that lighting off the back wall of where your screen is, and it provides this nice back bias lighting. And it's, I remember what Philips or Sharp offered that Aquos or whatever rear lighting probably about 7, 8, 9 years ago. Didn't really take off, but it makes a difference. And especially when I come in the morning and it's a little dark in my office because I don't have lights on, and I turn on the computer and that thing pops up, and it just kind of fills the room with ambient light. It's nice, and it's not hurtful unless you've got like a pure black background and you pop up a white window and then you're suddenly Nosferatu. But other than that, it's good stuff, and it's not terribly expensive. It's like $79 for the 34-inch, 35-inch widescreen that I'm using. It's good stuff. And it's it's a little modular, and you can use it for a lot of things, and just take your time and put it all together, and it works nicely.
And you put on a little careless
Plus,
whisper.
I had $50 worth of Discover points, and so I got it for $25, $30.
Nice.
It was nice.
And to Brett's point, Josh, did you play any old George Michael? Did you play any old Wham videos? Did you watch the Careless Whisper video? What does it throw behind your monitor during Careless Whisper?
I only watched Freedom for multiple reasons. But because of the dark and the flashes of white and light and skin tones and whatever, it was very, very natural. It felt like that, I was with the supermodels of the 90s in spirit.
When I watch Ariana Grande videos on this display instead of working, I think it really adds to the ambience. I wouldn't have noticed the lag because I was just so engaged in what I was watching. Right. Brett, did you have a pick of the week for us?
I did, and I got this out again. I had it for a while. I backed these guys on Kickstarter, and I was like, wow, this thing is really useful. I should travel with this more. This is a collapsible laptop stand. It's called the Roost, and I backed it on Kickstarter, and I got it for a reasonable price at the time. It's a little bit pricey now. I put the links in there. So yeah, this is the original, very high quality. Very strong. It actually works really well. Keeps the laptop a lot cooler when you want to, maybe.
Can you assault somebody with that?
I maybe once, maybe twice. Might get a couple of reasonable swings out of it. It's actually a fairly hefty, good quality plastic in that. But
I thought it was metal.
No. This one isn't metal. But yeah, the whole thing collapses and it's resettable for a height perspective. So you can get the exact angle that you want out of it. But this is somewhat pricey from the original Roost people. Like I said, I backed it on Kickstarter and did pretty well with that. But they make a slightly less expensive version, kind of a Chinese knockoff. Actually, you make something like this on Kickstarter. In fact, they watch Kickstarter and knock it off sometimes before the original people even get it to market. But they have a more less pricey variant of this that's pretty much the same thing. So for $30, it's actually a reasonable collapsible travel companion to get your laptop off the suffocating surface of the bed, maybe or whatever, or at the right angle, so that you're not hunched over your laptop when you're traveling or whatever, or even at home. So
does it work on a bed? Is it stable enough that you can
absolutely
put it on? Okay.
Yeah.
What are you doing on the bed?
You just,
you need stability for various reasons on the bed, Jeremy. With your laptop.
Can you apply the Hue 2 to the back of that? Never mind.
You know what? You can apply it to anything, Josh. Anything.
Apply it directly to the forehead.
I was thinking like the back. I could have my own ambient light and just plug. Well, I have to plug the USB cable into something.
Jeremy, I could watch that 40 or 50 times.
Yeah. You maybe will be doing it mentally right now.
I am. I'm going to go over to ZomboCom later, too.
What are we talking about? The click of death video,
Head on.
or what?
No,
Head on. Apply directly to the
You can do
forehead.
anything.
Oh, okay.
ZomboCom. You could do anything at ZomboCom. No one knows what we're talking
The
about.
world is your
It's
oyster.
completely over my head. I have no idea what this is.
ZomboCom.
You're using
could
it
do
wrong
anything.
then. Apply it directly to the head. To the forehead.
I have a very conventional and not very exciting pick, but you know what? Lenovo was kind enough to send some laptops, which I desperately need to get through. One of the recent finds in these like 5 boxes full of laptops that I have here is the ThinkPad T490S. And I took it out of the box and I'm thinking, okay, what is this? It's 8th gen. It's not that compelling, but you know what? It actually is, because it's super light. And it's just everything that a ThinkPad should be. It's everything that a work laptop should be, in my opinion.
Keyboard. It's got the raised keys.
Yep.
It has
Looks
nice
like it can-
keys.
Oh. It's got the
almost
ThinkPad thing,
and you can
the
finger it
right
too there.
corner.
It's got the nipple.
It's got the track point. But you know, I'm
that's what
so
that
used to
is.
shallow. I'm so used to shallow key presses, and I've been using an HP Spectre with it's really, really crisp and clicky, but very shallow.
Ken is honestly on his way to your house right now. He has just seen
Probably.
this, and he is on your way. So
All right.
expect Ken about 3:00 in the morning.
You can have the sofa.
We should all.
You probably won't hear
expect
him.
We'll talk in the morning.
Ken. Yeah. Anyway.
I miss Ken, but you know,
Where's the camera
bad.
on it?
up
Is
top.
camera at the top? Good.
It's cameras at the
Really
top
from
above
the
the screen
picture.
where it should be. So it's just
Yes.
there are no concessions. Like if you look at the side, there's actual real I/O, and of course this Amazon listing doesn't really have any pictures, but there's like full size USB ports. There is a USB Type C which is used for charging as well. There's HDMI. There's no Ethernet, but you know it's a thin and light, but it's
Okay.
great. It has good enough performance. It's available with this low power IPS display. So it's not the brightest screen, but it actually has really good color saturation. And I'm liking the 1080 resolution at this 14-inch size. I set the scaling, I think, in Windows to 125%. Looks really nice.
That is only almost old school
Oh, geez.
ThinkPad. If it was
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
3/4 of an inch bigger.
And I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind a thicker one, but when you have this in your hand, like it was surprising. It was almost like a dummy unit that you'd find in a furniture store. It's very, very light. It's thinner than the previous iteration in this T series, and it's a phenomenal laptop. It is pricey. I mean, I'm looking at the Amazon listing here, this particular configuration with the i7-8565U, 8 gigs of RAM, and a 1 terabyte NVMe SSD. Is $1,519, but this is a business laptop, and it's actually very close to X series. And I have, I'll be looking at some X series stuff too, but the X1, I mean that's the high end. That's like $1,799 and up, I think. And this is $1,519 for something that's really close, not quite as slim, but rigid and has far more key travel than you would expect from a laptop this slim. Almost, it's more than I'm used to. For the last couple of years, so it almost I feel like I'm typing slower on it actually, just because there is so much more key travel. But we're talking, you know, I don't know what the actual distance is, but we're talking probably less than a millimeter of additional travel versus what I had been using. But still, if you like that old school ThinkPad, this keyboard is very close to that first gen ThinkPad Yoga that I absolutely love, that I finally gave up. But and actually the reason I gave it up was because that was using a PWM backlight and it was giving me migraines when I used my laptop for extended periods of time. This does not have a PWM backlight. So it's like the total package for me. And that's it. That actually brings podcast 554 to a close, unless anybody has any final thoughts. So that concludes this week's podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching if you watch the podcast, and we will talk to you guys next week.